Start recording. Excellent. Okay. Hello, everyone. What are we doing today? Let me get my camera fixed. There we go. All right. What are we doing today? So about a year ago, I made a video about hating communists and hating the Alchemical Exalted, and today we're right at the anniversary of it. We're about a month out, and I've made a lot of writing progress since then, and I wanted to talk about it, and I wanted to respond to that video because now that I have been in the sauce with this for a while, I'm realizing why they had certain problems. So I've actually got a bulleted list of issues that I brought up that were really specific to them. And in the middle of that video, I rant about why communism doesn't work for like 20 minutes, which I'm going to kind of skip over because I think it's pretty self-apparent. But yeah, that's what we're doing today. Uh, this is primarily for backers because I'm sure they're getting impatient for this game. I'm working on it. We're making really good progress, and I've got a nice little list of things that like many parts of the project need to get done that I'm posting up with this video for them. So you can get a little more accountability, a little more regular design work. I've been kind of lost in this nebulous haze for a little bit uh, of really high level like concept design. First of all, before we get too deep into it, I would like to point out that acid here is it's not done, but this draft of it is done. You can see I've got this really nice layout art in the back, which makes the pages look a lot less empty. I've got placeholder art. Some of these have white boxes still because I've got to update the art with the transparent versions, and this is a couple of the things I got to do. But for the most part, you're seeing the layout of the first half of the book. This is supposed to be my answer to the Infernals, and you can tell there's just these wonderful, nice, rich chunks of design here. Look at this lovely set. Some of this art is just gorgeous, just how it is. Like, these are all transparent, so I was able to put them in. They look really nice. This guy is a transparent. He looks really nice. So, yeah, and then we have all their powers, and there's lots and lots and lots of them. So let's scoot this up a little bit faster. Yeah, so you can tell this looks just really pretty. It's really nice, chunky, beautiful design here. Lots of really fun art. I'm actually quite a fan of that one. Oh man, look at that one. That's another good one. We've got some great artists now. I actually found this guy, Anna Luke, that I've been leaning on for art. Oh, and there's more art to put in here too. Kazuki gave me some demon babes I'm going to put in this. So this, again, this isn't... I didn't spell ambivalent correctly. Who would have thought? But yeah, so it isn't done, but it is extremely close to being done. Like, look at this so much. I even have the lores completed. And I've noticed, and this is something that I want to point out that I'm doing in the robot half of the book. I noticed that I needed a overall lore for this different setting, and then I needed to do so there's the unifying lore chart, and then I need to do individual lores for all the different discrete parts of it. So there were 7 of these to do in the demon half of the book. There's only 3 of them to do in the robot half of the book. So this is going to be a much faster design. So yeah, you can see. Again, there's little bitty bits that I didn't get around to writing. There's notes on this. I just haven't actually put them in there yet. That's why it's in red text. But what I'm going to work on today, what we're talking about today, is Steel, the latter half of the book. So the first thing I want to apologize for is the setting information. One of the things I ragged on the authors of the Exalted the Alchemicals book was that they took a long time to give us a lot of setting information, and it was really dull and tedious, and I stand by the fact that it was tedious. Yeah. Although I think a draft or two to edit that would have fixed it up nicely. But what I found was that it's actually necessary. So the world of Babel Kiminar, which is this enclosed robot world, it really does need a lot of explanation. It's not just like this is the post-apocalypse or this is hell. There's no mythological underpinning to it. It's not an underworld. It's like an Inferno world. It's basically the world that's described in the Blame manga. Have you ever seen that? It's this giant robot cathedral world, and that you because there's no preconception of what that could be or look like, you have to introduce all of those things. So that requires some text. And it also requires an explanation because it's artificial. So it was made in some way. So these are absolute requirements. You can't skip those. You can't just say, there's a robot world, nobody knows where it came from. I mean, I guess you could, but it's pretty unsatisfying. Like, I do that a lot in the core book where I'm like, no one knows, like, the history is lost for this technology. But to some extent, I feel like it's important to have a sense of history when it comes to building a new setting like this. And my setting, the World of Ashes and Ghosts, does have a sense of history. Every different faction is like, here's the ashes that this faction crawled out of. Here's the problem they had to solve. And all of them have it. They have mythologies, they have gods, they have philosophies, like they have cultures. And I was able to introduce that in the context of this is a post-apocalyptic world that is somewhat similar to ours, right? And when you have the post-apocalyptic world, mystery is your friend, right? Because that gives you as a GM or you as a setting writer a lot of like room to put in whatever your imagination decides you want to put in there, you know. That's great, you know. But when you have an internalized world like this, especially one where the resources of this world are tracked discreetly as a tactical consideration of the players and the different power players of NPCs within the world, suddenly you have to be a lot more thoughtful about how you're constructing that. And you have to communicate these aspects of things to players and to GMs in a way that's, well, it's not as uh, dull, hopefully, as the White Wolf writing. And actually, you can compare that video where I'm going through like 20 minutes in, and I'm just going through these thick blocks of uninteresting text. But you'll notice that I have a similar format here. So here's my setting, which wound up being critically necessary. Um, I've got the mythic and real history, so I wanted to have that contrast because there's a certain aspect of the communist energy that informs this part of the book that requires a materialistic base. Like fundamentally, this is about scarce resources and who gets to have control over them. Um, which, I mean, communism and capitalism have in common, but communism moralizes that, and I think that's interesting. At least in terms of it making an interesting setting. In the real world, it's a nightmare. Um, but yeah, so as an element of that, I wanted to make sure I was putting that into the writing. Again, this was necessitated by the structure, which I didn't think that was going to be necessary, but there you go. So there's that. I've got their history, and this is the shared history of the world. Because again, the broader setting requires introduction here, which is something I didn't really have to do a whole lot of with Lone Wolf Fist, because we know what the real world is like. An internal robo world founded by super commies, that requires a little background. Yeah. Thankfully, I was able just to steal from Bioshock, so that made it a lot easier. Don't feel bad though; they were already stealing from Atlas Shrugged. Anyway, let's see here. I've got the big event that turned their giant super state into multiple smaller states, and the inevitable the inevitable societal collapse that was happening that presaged this. Um, I had to talk about the actual geography of the place because again, you need to introduce the setting in a way that GMs can kind of quickly wrap their mind around it. You will notice in my writing though that this is a lot more immediate. Like you kind of get the idea right away what this is trying to communicate, and I don't waste a lot of your time. Like I made certain with each individual chunk of this writing to be very clear about here is the thesis statement of this chunk of writing. It'll take up no more than one column, and that's it, in and out. And I was very disciplined with all of them. Like I didn't. This is the standard font size. I didn't do any tricks or anything like that, and all of it required cuts and discipline. And there's a lot of writing here that was in earlier drafts that I discarded. Oof. Um, but it was necessary to do all of this, not only to introduce the setting and to give a shared history to it so that players and GMs can kind of quickly get into character in this sort of alien world, but also to give them something to do. The problem that you are trying to solve while you are in Autochthonia in the Alchemicals game is a little bit unclear. It's not clear if you're solving the problem of societal cohesion. It's not clear if you are fighting against the rot that is slowly overtaking Autochthon. It's not clear if you are battling for scarce resources. in an anti-human environment. It's not clear, right? It's not the discrete like you're doing all of those things, but how you do them and why you do them, it's all jumbled up in this complete mess. So I made this I clarified this, right? Made every individual part of the continuation, upholding, and survival, all of that part of what you do in the game. So, Starving the Clockwork Darkness is about how you get resources to feed people. Needing to feed people is something that's in the core game, so it's something that's familiar to players of the core game. And this just kind of tells you how you do it here, because you can't grow stuff in fertile soil, so you have to do something else. Again, I needed to put some words in there for how you do that. Um, let's see how the spirits and weird denizens of this world work. Again, that's kind of there's an animistic aspect to the broader setting. This is how that works in Robot World. Again, in the Alchemicals book, it's not clear if these things are spirits, if they're robots, what happens when they're no longer in the autochthonian setting when they go into the broader creation. Do they become immaterial? I don't bother with any of that. I'm like, no, they're robots and they have power given to them, which is divine in nature. Much easier, right? Yeah. I introduce the robot heroes themselves, which again, it's really important in the setting to give players and GMs an idea of like, okay, why are these guys built? What do they do? Like, what are their powers? What motivates them? Like, how are they heroes, right? So, what do you do concretely? The robots in the alchemical book are interesting, but I go into in that video about 40 minutes in, I want to say, I go into about how it's like, okay, so why would you ever, if you're Stalin, why would you ever make better version of robot Stalin who's immortal and makes you look like garbage? It's like you would never fund that, right? So it doesn't work with communism. So I actually put a lot of thought into, okay, why would these societies make their replacements? What are they doing here? And that I made it actionable. I made it something where it's like if you want to tell if you as a player want to go for toppling your communist society and replacing it, here are the problems you're going to encounter in real terms. And that made it a lot more interesting than saying, oh, yeah, it's been 5,000 years of continuous history and no one's tried that, which communism works perfectly. Yeah, White Wolf, good job with that. Um, and yeah, and here's a very, this was another important thing to put in because again, the Alchemicals screwed this up where it's like they slowly become more robotic over time, and they got to kind of find a way to balance that against their humanity. And with them, I think it's something to do with virtues. But with my game, I was like, no, I think that you really do have a dual nature when you're a robot with a soul that has the capacity for human connection and love. Like you can actually become a person, you know. So I wanted to put that right here in the setting description where it's like, look, this is a conflict, an internal conflict that every artificial hero has. Yeah. Oh, so tasty. Because I wanted to draw attention to it. I think it's interesting, and I think it's a struggle that allows for a lot of fascinating role playing opportunities. All right, so now the real work. And a lot of what I've done here is just take old writing and I've just polished it up and reorganized it. So I've got the artificial heroes here. I reduced the way their biology works to just this. I had to be a little more disciplined. Same thing with repairing and healing, right? And what they look like, their psychology, their biology, and I also put in a thing, much like in Battle Angel Alita, where if you die, you can get rebuilt, and that sometimes works, and sometimes it gives you amnesia, and sometimes it doesn't, and there you go. Um, so yeah, there's a Ophanim resurrection chart. These guys are artificial heroes, aka Ophanim, and you can see Nuke chilling with her new buddy Piston Head there. They pals, they palling it up. Added some more beautiful Kazuki art there. You can actually see some gorgeous setting stuff here. That's just beautiful. I love Kazuki's stuff. Let's zoom in on that a little bit. Oh, look at that! Isn't that beautiful? Yeah, I love his stuff. I think he put some binary in there for me. Oh no, it's not binary, but it's like code. Yeah, there's just so much wonderful, dense detail and great use of shadow here. Very intimidating and cool. Really communicates the setting nicely. Um, I revamped the Three Great Nations, so I had to add a few things to these. Because the robots are created, I had to write a why are they built chunk. Um, let's see, what else? I think that's the biggest change. I did finish up the other two, so now I have the Dragon States, which were kind of a rough one because I've got authoritarian asshats, aka the sort of Judge Dredd dudes, which, I mean, it's fun to be Judge Dredd, but I think you have to accept the fact that there's a lot of moral cloudiness to your version of heroism. Dragon States, which are anarchic punks, which is really hard to do in a super hostile, resource scarce environment. So again, there's a complexity to them that's a little bit interesting. I tried to channel a lot of Neuromancer with these guys because I liked the idea of their society being like kind of like hyper capitalist and therefore having like a really powerful concentration of wealth at the top. That's not an inevitability of capitalist systems, but I think that they tend more towards an oligarchic system. And I think that's you need a really sharp oligarchic divide between a very small, powerful amount of haves and a big, chaotic chunk of have-nots if you're going to have a real cyberpunk setting. And so the Dragon States is my cyberpunk setting, so I tried to build their society around that. And then I've got Mammon, and I struggle with these guys because I kept making them inadvertently too good guyish. Like they really are like knights of the round table, but robots. You know, they have they're a sort of aristocracy of mechanical beings who rule over their human counterparts, which is unusual. Usually, it's the other way around. Usually, the robots work for the people. Here, the people work for the robots. Because again, why wouldn't you at least try? And I wanted to showcase in the core three what a functioning robot-led society could look like. Here's a version of that. And I made them aristocratic in really interesting ways, where like they kind of procreate. Like they have two houses that come together to make a an heir that's a scion to the houses, even though they don't like procreate in the sort of natural way humans do. They've kind of aped it to create a lineage, so that's really fun. And I kept making these guys too good, so I was like, okay, but there were real drawbacks to doing it aristocratically. Like whenever we had aristocratic societies as like the primary thing, there were real issues. So I channeled a little bit of Dune into these guys and made them a little more squabbly and vainglorious, and I think that fixed them up nicely. They're still probably my favorite faction, ethically speaking. I think they probably have it the most right for their environment. Um, so I don't know what that says about me in terms of political leaning, but I like the Knights of the Round Table. I think they're good dudes. All right. Then you'll note that I moved the augmentations rules after that because I want to introduce their powers after we've introduced the splats and the core rules. And this actually is an echo of how I did it in the core book too, right? You introduce the core rules of the heroes, and then you do the splats, and then you do their powers. Augmentations are unusual enough in the way that they function that they need to be clarified that they're not just techniques again. They have another way of doing things. And again, I have to offer a bit of an apology here to the authors of Exalted the Alchemicals because you have to stipulate a lot on these whenever you're making the robot powers, right? They just function differently. They can be installed and uninstalled. They can be loaded with fuel and with ammo. They can be put on humans. They can change like your chassis and like the dimensions of your body and the way you interact with the setting. So like there's a lot going on with them that makes them very different than techniques. And because techniques you can kind of just plaster over everything with it's magic, it works. You can't do that with robot power because again, materialism is at the heart of how these function. So they have to be very discreet in the way they work. They can't like move their elbows out and suddenly have this more creative interpretation. You really have to box them in a much more solid way. So I gotta offer a little bit of an apology to the White Wolf guys. Now you'll notice that the ways in which I restrict the and uh, not just restrict, but otherwise organize the information about how these function is at the beginning in a nice, easy to like. You could reference this section easily in game, right? instead of putting it in the text of the powers, which is what they did and what I complained about in that video. So yeah, there's better ways to organize the information, and a second or third draft would really have helped that book a lot. Um, I've got the paradigms here, how you gain augmentations, which is nice and clean. I added in that you can rip them out of the robot opponents you face and install them into yourself, and that actually has inspired me to write a whole nother augmentation paradigm specifically from the monsters. It's kind of a sleeper paradigm, so only those of you who have made it this far into the video will understand my nefarious plans to give you more content for the same price. Yeah. So yeah, it'll be a lot of fun for your players to kind of discover that on their own. Like, because all you need to do is give them this little chunk where it's like, oh yeah, you can actually install augmentations from your enemies. And at first they might be like, okay, well if I fight another artificial hero, I can take their augs. But they're like, wait a minute, what if I take the augs out of the non-artificial heroes, like the weird robot monsters I fight? Can I install those? And all of a sudden, this new way to interact with the setting opens up for them, this new path to power. So I like stuff like that. I like little Easter eggs I can get to you there. Not a huge fan of that layout. Why is that? I think we can probably do better than this. I've been trying to make the layout a touch more friendly. Oh, that's not bad. Although I probably don't need this then. I can probably kill that particular thing. We'll leave this empty for now, but... Well, you know, actually, I could probably make this... If I'm just... Oh, no. Look at that. Look at that rump. Pathetic. Yeah. We'll Control-Z that bad boy for now. This is fine. This is fine. I'm not mad about it. I'm not mad about this. I'm mad about it. I'll fix it later. Actually, I'm going to do this right now. One thing I like to do is just write, like, fix this. Just so I don't forget to fix it later. You're seeing my editing in real time. There we go. And then we just take this and we... There we go. Okay, we're going to save that. There we are. We like that. Okay, beautiful. Okay, so scooting on down, here's what we have done. Now, I've actually just done a review of the core robotics paradigm. I'm pretty happy with it. Yeah, overall, I think I did a really good job with this. And I'm currently doing... Oh, you'll notice that the Become a City powers have been moved here. The first time you actually encounter them. They're not earlier in the text anywhere. They are an answer to the question of what is this? And they are a very long, chunky answer, as you can tell. But I think this is probably the coziest place for them, because this is where you're generally... Within the powers is whenever you're going to have questions about this. So I've put it here. The demons part of the book has it earlier, and I think I might actually move it until the first power in that case, too. I like the way that info sticks there a little better. Here's the authoritarian one. I've gotten all the way up to here for my second edit, and we're going to double check these. Now, I changed the way the city powers worked so that these should have buildings. Their whole, another page or so, maybe two, of buildings and what those buildings do and how much it costs to build them and all of that. And those are going to be the augmentations for that level. So this is going to be the first place where I add those. Now, I don't have those boop, 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 over here on the core ones because the core doesn't have any special powers. You have to get those from your other paradigm. The reason for that is that I realized very quickly that because you live in a human hostile environment, you would need certain functions that I don't want to make you make decisions about. Like, you shouldn't have to make a decision about having air scrubbers, having water purifiers, having an energy grid, right? Like, that's not something that is a decision you make. That's an inherent aspect of being a city that supports human life within Bab el-Khimar. So I just I just made 7 of them, one for each of your chakra, and I linked them to your chakra, and I said, okay, every single city gets to have those, right? And I've got all their function right here and what they do for you. And again, because I had the foresight to design how to make like the broader, like the hexes and the societies in those hexes function in a rules relevant way where like players can interact with them whenever they get to the point of domain rulership. I didn't have to put a lot of extra umph into these just do individual things that I can reference back to the core book. Yeah, functions as a power plant, functions as atmospheric stabilizers, functions as a water purifier plant, functions as a hydroponic garden, which is a rich consumables node. Nice and easy. You see how easy that is? I love that. Um, and yeah, so excuse me, the individual paradigms, the ones that have a little more flavor to them that aren't just the core robotic stuff, all of those are going to have the ways in which you control the societies or create societal continuity, not necessarily stability, programmed into how their powers work. And I might, maybe, let's see here, get disorganized notes under my drinks here. I might actually have, yeah, here we go. Okay, so yeah, you can see I got the core powers there, and then here, ta-da! I've got the main ideas for all the different other paradigms and what their buildings will do for their society and how that reinforces their society. And in addition to that, go a little less far actually. You can see that this grew out of me attempting to to turn their actual bodies into usable hex content, and you can see that they now have this cool upper city, mid city, lower city thing. So there's a literal stratification of their societies, which of course is a lot of fun. And then that grew out of this, which is like, how am I going to make the lores for these societies, and how am I going to make their powers interact with those lores? So there was a lot of thought. There was a lot of thought, and this is what I've been doing for the last few months, and how to make all this function. And you'll notice that it's much weightier than I originally conceived, because the lores in the core book are very lightweight, and these are simply going to have to be much denser because they directly interact with decisions that players make in terms of the buildings they make that create the incentives for these societies. And because upholding the status quo and creating a new status quo, which is a continuity of the current society that you're a larger part of, is a heroic and difficult act, those lores have to challenge it. So there's going to be broadly two things at war within each lore. There's going to be the forces of the society as it functions as intended, and there's going to be the subversive and anarchic element that's rising up to try and destroy it. And that's also going to be contrasted with all the big monsters in the bestiary, which are also doing their best to destroy it. And these should all interact in interesting ways. So yeah, making all that integrate in such a clockwork fashion, I should have known it was going to be like building a machine, right? It all had to be well oiled, all the parts had to fit together. I did not understand your game, Autochthon, and I must apologize to the writers of your book because they also didn't know what they were getting into with this. And they did a reasonably good job of trying to integrate all of that. Again, I went over that last video the ways in which they failed for me, but it is actually a lot. And you do have to integrate it in a surprisingly well, um, in a surprisingly detailed way. There's a lot of little moving parts to it. I've yet to get back to Anarchy, so I feel like this stuff. Um, I think I changed their bullet trains out. I'm gonna have to switch these out. I rebuilt this. I didn't like the idea of having to turn into a train. It just didn't seem very interesting. Um, and with the aristocratic guys, I need to double check their paradigm entirely. Like the reason this is under construction is because a lot of the idea work behind them has changed a lot. Because these guys were the cutting edge science guys, and I've kind of shifted that over to the anarchy guys, and I've made these guys more of a like noble knights and lineage thing. So like I'm gonna need to look into how these function and kind of shuffle things around. These two are the big hang up. All the rest of the work I'm doing is about getting these two augmentation paradigms on paper. Once that's done, I don't really have anything significant stopping the writing. I've got these kung fu, which these are going to have to get gone through again. to make sure they work okay. Two of those are more or less written. I'll go through them and make sure I'm benchmarking them. And then I've got this one, which is the other sword style, which is going to be a lot of fun. Um, I've got the bestiary. There's only a little bit more info in here than there was last time. Mostly the thing I'm excited to work with on this is creating the monster paradigm and then kind of putting those powers into individual monsters so that you can, as you fight your way through the bestiary, you're getting new, interesting, different powers if you want them, or at least access to them. Um, Oh goodness, yeah, I've got the power tiers here. This is from the core book, just to kind of guide my writing on these things. I've got some art. I've got, let me see, this was experimental layout that eventually made its way into the other part of the book. I really like this layout. I want to do a different version of this uh, for the robot part of the book, so there's a good texture to all of the pages. And as you can tell, we've got fantastic art for this section. There's more than this, but these are really good. And then here's something I'm really proud of: the world of cogs and steam, hex crawling in the clockwork world. So give me a second here. Yeah. Okay, so hex crawling didn't require a lot of innovation on my part in the core book, right? You have a hex map, you walk through it, pretty straightforward, right? In Bob Elkeminar, because you're moving omnidirectionally through a place that is like a cramped factory thing, you are constantly running into setbacks and like having to like go back around and do all these things that would be really interesting if you were actually, if I could make a game of infinite complexity and make it like a dungeon crawl thing, that would probably be very fascinating. No one has the kind of time and energy to have a planet-sized or even a moon-sized mega dungeon that's designed in 3 dimensions that you have to flip through pages to get through. No one could do that, right? So I still want the general decision making and the frustrations and the challenges and dangers to be something that's brought up to the players, but I really only want like the coolest, most interesting or dangerous scenes to bubble up to the surface and be played at the table. So the compromise for that is I took the fighting system and I designed a journey system that works on the same kind of mechanisms, and that's what this is. So you have what are effectively combat rounds for your legs of the journey, and the journey itself is its distance and the danger of it combines together to give you like what it can do, and it rolls its attack dice and you roll your defense dice, and you kind of have to figure out how to spend it. So you have this decision paradigm where you're figuring out which dangers you want to deal with and more abstractly with the dice and your resources, and which ones you want to or have to play through to get further into your journey and make progress towards it. So that's what this is. There's not a ton. This is all really just the skeleton of it here, and my co-author has a bunch of extra info. And ooh, do I have that? I do, but I'll show you guys later. But he actually has written this massive amounts of like lists and content stuff, and I'm going to take those and use those as the bedrock of this section. So co-author's already been paid, no worries about that. He's a really good dude to work with. He's going to be credited, and this is kind of going to be largely his section. But yeah, so that's what this is. I'm really excited about it. It's going to be interesting to design, but you can see why I'm reticent to get into it until after I have the bestiary, until after I have like the lores and what have you, because I want all of that to be. This is a delivery mechanism for all of that stuff, right? So I'm excited, but I've gotta wait a little bit on that. More initial layout stuff. The old augmentation paradigms. I haven't taken this out of this yet, although, oh, actually, I've got his stuff here. Oh yeah, look at that, gorgeous. Yeah, there's lots of stuff. Look at all this. Yeah, it's a lot. It's good. I didn't realize I had that pulled up. Wonderful. But yeah, I still want to go through this, and I might just I might take ideas out of here still because I'm still working on those 2 paradigms, and I might take some of these and put them in the monster paradigm. That's why I haven't tossed them yet. It's also interesting to see how my thinking about the individual robot powers has advanced over time. Got the index, which is about the same as it was last time you guys saw it, and that's basically it. Goodness, how long have I been doing this? I meant to do this for half an hour. Ooh, I don't actually know. I don't know how long this has been recording. Oh, here it is. Yeah, 34 minutes. So that's my half an hour. Let me look and double check and make sure I didn't. Let's see. Well, I think just giving you guys a little tour is what I wound up doing. I kind of just skimmed over most of these points. Oh well, maybe next time I'll answer it a little more specifically. But yeah, this was initially going to be an apology video to the guys who wrote Exalted the Alchemicals, because I didn't realize how big of a beast they were dealing with. And yeah, in some ways it is. In some ways I'm like, yeah, guys, I'm sorry. You were under way tighter deadlines than me, and that you actually had deadlines. My deadline is, you know, how much you guys are willing to tolerate me working on this before I release anything substantial. Although I feel like we've got some good stuff with Acid already released. Um, but I guess my point here is this stuff isn't easy. It required a lot of thoughtfulness, and it requires a impressive amount of interconnected work. And I'm a single author doing all this. And if you even add just one person to that, as I've seen, there's a lot of information that you've got to kind of reinterpret and integrate very carefully into what you've done. So you can't just take their raw writing and shove it in. You have to have a real masterful technical editing, or line editing, I think is what you really have there. So yeah, wrapping up. You can see where I am with it. Let me before I go, let me pull up my little list of things that I have yet to do, just so you guys know the bullet point. Let's see. Here we go. All right, so stuff working on today. The authoritarian metropolis augmentations. I've mentioned those. Those are going to get written today. Next up is anarchist augmentations, then aristocratic augmentations. We're just going to finish those sections. We're going to do the Kung Fu for the People's Fist, Dragon States, and Mammon. It's just a review of the first two and the design of the third. We're going to do the Bestiary next and the Monster Design Paradigm. I don't know, or the Monster Augmentation Paradigm. I don't know how we're going to chicken and egg that. I might do the Paradigm first and then do the Monsters after. Haven't decided exactly. Yeah, whichever direction we go, we'll probably have to rewrite it to fit the previous writing. So one way or the next, those two are going to get done afterwards. I'm going to do the overarching lore for Bab el Kheminar. Then I'll do the People's Fist, Dragon States, and Mammon lore individually, which, as I described, is going to have that nice tension between upholding society and giving you NPCs of a functioning society versus destroying society and the NPCs of enemy factions. Ew, excuse me. Going to do the travel mechanics, which we discussed. I have two backers to make demon factions for, one of which has given me some really good info so far. So I'm going to do that one first, and then we'll talk to the second demon backer, and then the robot backer. Once I actually have, like, this all written, being able to hand it to him and say, like, here's what I want you to be able to give me, like, let's talk about it, is going to be a much easier conversation to have. Then we do the final edit and layout draft. As you can see, we're actually in a pretty good place for that, so that should be pretty quick. Background and graphic design, finalization, and then we'll do the page XX's index, which I didn't put in the Lone Wolf Fist core book, but I will put in this, and a table of contents, legal and special thanks, including the backer credits, etc. And then I forgot to do a demon and robot character sheet, which I'm going to design and put in here as the very final step. And then I'm going to publish a PDF, and then I'm going to put it up for sale and advertise it, and begin to order drafts of the hard copy for proofs. Now, I want to make money as quickly as possible with this, obviously. So the way I'm going to do this is, first, all the backers get their PDFs, then I'm going to wait a couple days, then I'm going to submit it to DriveThruRPG, okay? So everybody gets their PDF first, and then people can buy the PDF. Same thing with the hard copies. I'm going to order the proofs as soon as I've got that up, As soon as the PDF is approved, I'm going to start ordering the hard copies, and I'm going to make sure they look good. Once I get one that passes, everything for me, then the backers will get them. I'm going to wait a couple of weeks so everybody gets it in their hands, and then I'm going to make the hard copies for sale. Just so we're all clear on how I'm going to do this and nobody's mad in my comments again. All the backers are going to get theirs first and have exclusive access to them. You backed, you get that. That's completely reasonable. But like, I do want to make it for sale as quickly as possible. So, with the PDFs especially, it's going to be, here you go, guys. And then 2-3 days later, boom, up for sale. So I don't want anyone coming in my comments like, where's my PDF? Brother, the first thing I'm going to do is make it available to backers. So if you didn't get it, email me privately and I will make sure you get it. Like, go to the Kickstarter page, whatever you got to do. Just message me. I'm on Discord, I'm on the Kickstarter, I'm on the Patreon, I'm on Twitter, for God's sakes. Find me. I will fix it for you. But like, there's still a review where it's like, oh, my backer's going to get this on the Kickstarter page for Lone Wolf Fist. And it's like, it was a day. I took a nap. Like, guys, come on. So, yeah. Please do not, like, please do not do that. Please just ask me. I'm super easy to work with, and I'm here for you. Like, I don't need public call-outs and shaming. Thank you. I get enough of that from people that aren't my fans. Anyway, but yeah, after we approve the final hard copy, coming up for sale, advertisement campaign, then we're done. And then I just continue doing this for the rest of my life until I die. I'm 40 this year, so how much longer could that possibly be? But that's it. That's what we're doing. Final point. I want to make sure I was bringing this up. This is kind of a general point over the last video. Communism still doesn't work, and the fact that the White Wolf writers thought it was more or less a utopian ideal that would always work, and that was in no way, like, the resources scarcity was in no way going to be an issue at all in their setting, is probably still the single biggest problem with that text. That, and just the way they wrote the information was so bad. But yeah, those two things, incorrect. Just doesn't work. And I investigate why within the consequential, this paradigm of my mechanics here, and I encourage you to try to make communism work within them. We'll see how it goes. Maybe you guys can make a functional communist utopia within Babylka Minar. I look forward to seeing if you can prove me wrong, and all of human history wrong. You got magic robots, maybe you can do it. In any event, that's everything for today. I'm going to kick this out to backers and then get back to writing. See you guys later.